Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan. I'm your host, Catherine Erdley, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group and consultancy for product businesses. Head over to resilientretailclub.com to find out more about working with me or about being a member of the club. I would love to have you. Just want to start off the episode with a very quick request. If you have got a copy of Tame Your Tiger, How to Stop Your Product Business Eating You Alive, which is my brand new book, which just came out at the end of February, please, if you have got a copy and you are able to head over to Amazon to leave me a review. Unfortunately, it does have to be Amazon for leaving reviews, it looks like. It would just mean the absolute world to me because, as all of you know, reviews are so important for businesses, but in the book world in particular, they are absolutely crucial. So if you've got a copy and you enjoyed it, please leave me a review. I would be so grateful. It makes such a difference. On to today's episode. I'm really excited for this conversation I had today with Hiral Jethwa, who is a brand and product photographer. She is somebody that I met through a networking group called Six Figured Females, which is based out in Essex. You can find out more about them at sixfiguredfemales.com. And Hiral started it along with two others, a really great networking group in person. And I wanted to get Hiral onto the podcast because she's so absolutely passionate about photography and the way it can really elevate product businesses and their offering. She is really passionate, as you hear, about working with creative product businesses. And she's an amazing photographer. She did the shots, my author photos for the book. And I'm sure you'll agree, they came out really nicely. And so I highly recommend checking out her services. But today we're going to be talking all about the importance of photography and also sharing tips on how to actually prepare for a product photography shoot. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself?
Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited to be here as I love listening to all your episodes. And now I'm here. So my name is Hiral Jethwa and I am a photographer. I've got 15 years experience in the photography world. And over the past 5 years, I've been really specializing in product photography and brand photography, mainly because the blow up of social media. It's been seen to be really demanding businesses to show up more, tell their story, and this daily need for content creation, which sort of influenced me to go down quite a specialized route, working with small businesses to help tell their story and how they can stand out with good photography.
Perfect lead into my first question, which is really just to touch on the subject of photography. I know a lot of people will be seeing this as an expense in their business, but can you talk about what it offers and how it's, effectively a sales driver?
So first of all, I strongly believe photography shouldn't be seen as an expense. It's just as important as your branding, your website, all the other elements of your business that you focus on to generate sales. You cannot have a good website, send emails out to your clients if you don't have the foundations of good imagery. Imagery has to be seen as your shop window, especially in the world that we're living in the social media world, where your first visual photo is giving your clients your first impression. So think of it as a shop window. You're investing in your photography to give that first unbelievable impression. And if you're not investing in photography and you're showcasing your products in poor light or not putting much thought into your photography, your clients will see that. Your audience will feel that. You have to give them a reason to engage with you. And by taking the time to invest in photography, to plan your shoots, to think about the story that you are telling them, you are giving yourself a reason to talk to your audience every single day. When they hit your website, they are looking at your products in the best possible light, and you're giving them a reason to follow through the customer journey to get to ultimately what you want is that buying button to hit that sale. So it's really important to see photography not as a tick box exercise, not something I just do and I've forgotten about it. Photography is actually a continuous expense, which sounds scary, but ultimately, if you invest in your photography and you see your sales go up, really a no brainer. In fact, the way I say to the people I work with, imagine that you have a photo you can use every day at the cost of less than buying a cup of coffee every day. You don't need to worry about, oh my God, I need to find an image, I need to write about something today. If you've got a bank of images, you've got a reason to email them, to talk about it on social media, and not waste. I know some people spend up to an hour a day just trying to think of something to write about. You have a library of images. So don't see it as an expense. See it as something that's actually going to help you in your business and ultimately increase sales. I know I had a client once, she came back to me and I just won't forget this. She sold paper clips. She couldn't sell the paper clips till I took a really nice tight image of the paper clip so people could see the quality. And then she sold out. I'll never forget that because that is the power of photography. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be good and clean, especially for product businesses that they get to see the actual product. And one other point to talk about with investing in good photography for product businesses, you don't want refunds, you don't want sales coming back. If you're not showcasing what you sell in good light to show the size of the product, the actual accurate coloring, you are reducing that level of refunds coming through. So that's another reason to invest in photography and not see it as an expense. It is there, it's a building block to all your other marketing activities.
There's so many things you said that really ring true there. First off is with the website. I think if you consider whether or not somebody has say like you can have a plug and play website, so one that you've built yourself without knowing too much about website development, and it can look absolutely amazing if you've got great imagery, and equally you could pay somebody thousands of pounds to develop a website for you, but if you didn't have the imagery to slot into it, it wouldn't look that good. So I totally see that. And I think there are some sectors, definitely if you're in that premium end, you almost can't charge somebody, multiple hundreds for an item if the photography looks like someone snapped it on their phone, on their desk or something like that. I think there's definitely times when it's almost impossible to sell without good photography. But it's interesting what you're saying about the paper clips, because that kind of suggests it goes all the way down the price spectrum.
We are definitely seduced by what we see. And if you don't see a good image of the product that you're about to purchase, you are not going to buy it. You'll easily jump from one website to the next website. If you see poor photography and it's not enticing, it's not telling a story, it's not addressing your pain point, you are very easily going to jump off to the next website because we are fickle. We live in a world where time is of the essence. There is so much available at our fingertips that if we're not immediately seeing what we want, we'll move on. Good imagery is giving your clients a reason to stay on your website, to stay on your social media and carry through that journey. Especially with social media, that first impression counts. If you are seen as a company investing in professional imagery, you are coming across as a professional company. You are building confidence with your audience that, look, I've invested in photography, therefore I invest in my products. It's of a good quality. I'm taking the time to look after my business, invest in that. So you are being delivered the highest possible quality product or service. So it's just so important that that first impression makes the best impression. And who wants to shop, for example, on a website? The products are poorly lit. You can't see the colors. You can't see the size of the actual product. You're not making it easy for your clients to want to buy. You've got to make it easy for them to have that sale because, like I said earlier, it's just so easy to jump from one place to another and move on to your competitors.
It's interesting what you're saying there. And also as well, just to say that I did a few of the eBay roadshows with Small Business Britain. So we went around to various different places in the UK and we spoke to lots of different people, lots of eBay sellers. And I remember there was a photographer I met, and one of them, I think it was down in Plymouth, and she was talking about how she worked with someone who sold light pools, plastic light pools on eBay. And again, like the paperclip story, the person hadn't really sold many. And then this person paid for the professional photography. And even on a marketplace, something like eBay, where there's just so many different products, it really helped them stand out because it had really great photography. And so they sold, it was like I forget how many millions of pounds this business was making off these plastic light bulbs, but it was really what it boiled down to your point, was the photography.
Yes, you've got to make it easy for people to understand what your product will deliver them in terms of value, and make it easy for them to make that selection. If you invest in professional photography and they're looking at your competitors who haven't, or they're just taking photos off their phone and have not really thought about how best to show that product and how it can fix a problem, you're not making it easy at all for them to buy from you. Make it easy. I'm sure that is being preached by all the various experts across all the marketing activities that we do. We've got to tell a story and make it easy for them to understand the product that they need to buy to fulfill that challenge.
Yeah, to solve that problem. No, I completely agree. And I think as well, the other thing I always say to people about buying online is that in a physical space, your conversion rate is usually between 30 and 50%. So between a third and a half of all the people who walk into a physical space buy, whereas online it's 2%, or that's the average. And if you ask me why I think that is, I think a lot of the time it's because you can see something in a physical space with all five senses. Not see it with five senses, you can experience it with five senses, whereas online it's just the images. So the images have, to the best of your ability, replicate the experience of being able to pick up a product and actually look at it. To your point, if it's poorly lit or doesn't show all the different elements, or doesn't show it to scale, or doesn't show what the bottom looks like or the inside looks like, then it's not really replicating that experience, and therefore it's harder then to push that conversion.
Yes, absolutely. And that, as I said earlier, investing in that photography, think about it as buying a cup of coffee, less than a cup of coffee. And that return on investment, I will pay off tenfold. I could wholeheartedly say that because I've had clients come back to me saying they've seen sales increase, they've seen traffic increase, because they're giving people a reason to come to their websites and find out about their products and services.
Perfect. So I guess my next question would be, is that for a lot of people who are listening, they may be thinking, maybe they've had experience with professional photography, maybe it's something they're looking to invest in, but it is, as much as we can say, it definitely will have great return on investment. And that sort of upfront payment can be quite nerve-wracking. So to what extent do you think it's important, if you're a product business, to find a photographer that shares that vision, your vision really, for your brand?
Super important. I totally understand when you're starting out in a business in particular, there are so many costs you are juggling with. And we have phones in our pockets that can take good photos. And very easily, I've had lots of conversations with small businesses that they run out of budget. But why I think it's really important to find that budget and find the right photographer is to allow yourself to put your best foot forward back to that first impression, and finding a photographer that understands your vision, because there's so many photographers out there, just as there's so many products for what you're possibly selling. And it's finding that photographer that understands your vision and that can tell your story. I always said this, you could put 50 photographers in a room, for example, to photograph a candle or a person, and you'll get 50 different types of images coming back up. And what you need to do is find a photographer that will understand your style, your vision, and that they have a setting that could tell your story. So do the research, find a photographer that you connect with, and one that you can speak to, and that will take the time to actually understand the vision you want to create. By taking the step of understanding what your photos will look like, you're going to start feeling more confident about spending that money and investing in photography. And the other thing that will do, which I've seen with many of my clients, is a light bulb moment. Once you get involved in planning your photos, you'll start getting involved in how you want to share those images and the story that you want to tell. And that will start shaping the type of products that you want. And when we talk about product imagery, you have what I would call straightforward product shots, a product on a white background, which is quite essential and has to be lit correctly. And lighting is ever so important in photography to showcase your product. And then you move into things like storytelling images, how to use your products, addressing pain points. You start opening your mind to a whole host of types of imagery, which then leads on to a whole host of copywriting and content creation. So if you're looking for several reasons of why you should find the budget to invest in product photography. It is to help and support your business, and it will open up doors on how to create content, the copy, and the story that you want to tell.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? It reminds me of another important point that I wanted to bring up about imagery is that we think about it for our business, we think about it for our website, for our social media, but actually it's extremely important if you want to collaborate with other businesses. And collaborate could mean doing something jointly with them, or it could be that you want to be, if you're a product business, you want to be stocked by them, if you want to be featured by a market organizer, for example, or if you want to actually PR is really, really important. So if you can submit great imagery to a gift guide and also have some great lifestyle imagery to back it up, there's definitely products that I know for sure, having spoken to people who run, for example, really beautiful aesthetic magazines, that they're much more likely to use or talk about a business if the business has got the kind of photography that they can showcase and put into their magazine or onto their blog, and they already know it's of a certain level. And I do think it really opens up a lot of doors as well. So do you see that with your clients as well then?
Absolutely. I mean, product imagery has come a long way over the years. Before, let's say, when social media was growing so fast, before that, product images were images on a white background. You literally came on to see what you were buying. It was a very simple setup to show the product. Now, especially with the need for PR and these beautiful magazines and wholesale magazines, you're selling a story, you are selling your product, and you have to give them more than just a standard picture of the product, why they need to buy from you. So those lifestyle images are important to be put in those Christmas, for example, top 10 gift guides. Magazines are looking for beautiful photography. They want to entertain their audience. So they want to share lovely pictures and tell their story. And if they're making recommendations of what to buy, your imagery needs to look exclusive, luxurious, or that feeling of happiness. It's got to be telling a story. And especially for wholesale, you touched on there as well, working with some clients. If they're going to buy from you, stockists, if you have beautiful imagery, you're making it easy for them straight away. If they buy your product, you're giving them some images to help them promote your products in their shop or their online shop. You're making it easy for them. Imagery just goes across the board. You can use it in so many different places. But PR, again, is extremely important because they do demand high level, beautiful imagery.
Yeah, and if you've got it and you can just wheel it out and say to them, look, yeah, I've got this, that, and the other, I feel like you're much more likely to be featured than somebody who just doesn't have that. Or, and it could be that sometimes you need to have the few shots that you took yourself, but it's that next level of investment. But I wanted to come on to another point then. So we talked about the importance of finding that photographer who shares your vision. Do you think it's a question of kind of looking through their portfolio then, and do you almost want to say, right, this is somebody who I can see my products in this sort of setting, or I like their look and feel, like they're super clean and minimal, or maybe they're really lots of natural materials and earth tones? Like, do you think it's important to find someone who's maybe done something similar to what you yourself see, or is it more about a personal connection?
I would actually say it's more important to look at their portfolio. So on a personal connection, you might know photographers and you might want to work with them, but it's really important that they can deliver that setting for you. So working in particular with product photographers, we do not have every single prop or color aesthetics available in our studio. Therefore, it's really important to look through a photographer's portfolio to see their style, or work with a photographer, and this might increase your cost, who could get everything in for you. So if you have a personal connection, that photographer might still not be right. You might have to work that bit harder for them to create the look that you want. Whereas there are other photographers available, product photographers, who do niche. So if you like bright and airy, that's something they might do. I know one particular photographer, she's really just into bright pops of pink and bubblegum, and that's all she shoots, and that's what she's known for. So actually, in my opinion, I think it is better to find a photographer that will bring already, or that their portfolio is already showing that they shoot to the style you like. It just makes it that step easier when you come to planning, especially for budgets, because if that photographer has got a lot of the props and styling or the studio that suits your look and feel, you've made it one step easier for yourself to work with them, and a little bit easier on the budget.
Got it. That makes so much sense. And I think my next question would be about, well, it's interesting because my background obviously is the retail industry. So I spent many, many years in meetings where we would be talking about product development. And so as a result, I learned very quickly. And even though I wasn't the one responsible for developing the products, I was always in the meetings because of the sales data and the history and everything else. But what I realized very quickly was that product development is a very visual thing. So it's very hard. If you said, oh, I really want a black dress, for example, you can't say that to a dress designer. You have to be able to reference the silhouette reference and the fabric that you like. And so the buying team who would be driving that sort of development process, they were very good at breaking down exactly, this is what I want, but with this, that, the other. And so I think one thing that helped me with is that in my own business, if I'm working with somebody on something visual like branding, photography, I'm not saying I'm any good at this, but I do understand that you can't just say, for example, bright and airy, or it's much harder, I presume. And you tell me as the photographer, is it, if someone comes to you and says, oh, I just want it to look really clean, do you need more than that? Like, how do you suggest people go about really sort of communicating that vision to the photographer so you don't end up with a mismatch between what they want and what the end result is?
So planning for a product shoot is really important that the client does their homework. They've got to have a very clear vision, understanding their brand and the types of images that they want to create. So saying something like bright and airy is important because there's some photographers I know who only shoot bright and airy and they won't do a dark and moody look, which is on trend at the moment.
Yeah.
And you have to find a photographer that shoots dark and moody sometimes. There's lots of photographers have, as I said earlier, their particular style. So you might have found a photographer that gives you that overall look and feel you're looking for, but the nitty gritty to what you were referring to, the client has to bring to the table. They have to talk about who their ideal client is, what their branding and style is, and the elements that build up that brand. So let's say if you have a sort of a sea beach themed product, coastal story, how much of that story do you want to bring in? Do you really want to bring in elements of the beach, shells, for example, to tell that story? Or do you want to go a little bit more minimal and you're not being too focused on the actual story? It's really about finding all the elements of what you want to share and that vision that you want to come across. And the way I would actually start this is I would advise clients to create a mood board. Before you even look for a photographer, just create a mood board. Look at all the photos you're attracted to. Look at your competitors. Look at businesses in a similar niche. Go on to Pinterest. That's my favorite place to put a mood board together. It's really easy. But look at magazines. Look at the world around you, even if you're going past the shop window. Like Selfridges in London, it gives me lots of inspiration. They're always on trend. They're always setting the trend. Just look for what you like, from colors to elements, and start building that mood board together. And just from doing a mood board will give you a really good idea if you're going down the bright and airy look, dark and moody. See what you're attracted to, and then look at the elements in that story and take that to your photographer. And that photographer will break down that mood board to have those conversations like, do you want to go quite literal if we go back to that beach scene again? Do you want to actually put in very strong elements of the beach? Or do you want to just allude to that beach story and maybe just use the colors of the beach with no props like shells and moss? I can't think at the moment.
Seaweed, sand.
Seaweed, yes, yeah. Candy floss at the beach. You can go in so many different directions. But if you're working with the photographer, and it's really important that the photographer is asking those questions about your branding and your ideal client and who you're trying to attract with these images to tell your story and who you want to buy from you. So you're creating images that will attract that ideal client.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you ever find people, I suppose you get used to walking people through a process, right? Because I'm sure you must get some people who are like, oh, I just kind of want it, like, I can't really articulate. There's nothing you could see it on people's faces whenever, instead going back to my product development days, like you could just see it on designers' faces when, somebody, especially if it's like a director or someone would be like, well, I can't really put it into words what I want. Not that, or you just be like, oh, come on, need specifics. Like you can't just be like, oh, just, I can't really explain it. It's like, no, you got to be so specific because that's how you end up with photos that you love, right?
So it's an interesting question you asked because my background is actually marketing.
Right.
And the jobs that I was in for, I used to get very specific creative briefs. We want this. It was all very much with big budgets and people working with teams of people that knew what they wanted. So you're just piecing it together. Whereas when you're working with smaller businesses, their expertise isn't in photography or branding or creative. Their expertise is in what they're creating to sell. So if we take candles, for example, that's what they're an expert in. And as a small business owner, we have to wear so many different hats. So I do have experience working with people that aren't so experienced in creating a creative brief. So we go through this conversation that I'm having with you now. I will talk to them to find out about their ideal client, their branding. Have they got a website designer? Did they do it themselves? And I'll piece it together for them. So it's interesting with a photographer working with photographers because we do have creative vision. We get really excited. No shoot is ever the same. I absolutely love it when a product comes to me. Yes, it's fantastic if they've got a vision, but if they haven't, more than happy to help them develop this. As long as they do a little bit of homework, they've got to show me things that they're attracted to. Otherwise, I can create what I want because that makes me happy. But ultimately, I need to create. I could be creating something for Vogue and just making it really exciting. At the end of the day, we've got to keep it true to the business. So, doing a mood board, something using a platform like Pinterest, even share suggestions. You pick an image and it's giving you more images.
Yes.
I say, stick to 10 or 15. You don't need to get lost in a tunnel of imagery. But when you pick your 10, 15, it does tell a story. We are all attracted to what we like, and it does come together. And working with a photographer will break that mood board down and then create what I call a shot list, where we're talking about the props, the styling, the background, the elements. It literally is a shopping list. Think of it as a shopping list. That's what a photographer wants at the end of the day. But it is a photographer's job to pull it together. You give the element. It's not, this is the photo, what can you copy it? No photographer even wants that. You're giving them a shopping list is the best way I can describe it. And then the photographer will pull it all together.
And I'm just reminded of the way that we work together. So I should just say to the people listening to the podcast that the amazing photos with the book that I had taken. So Hiral, because you also do some branding, so actual photos of business owners as well as product photography. And we'd had a conversation about the fact, because we know each other through networking group. And I said, oh, well, maybe after the meeting, we could have you could just take a couple of shots because I just needed like author's headshots with the book. And then you're the one who came back to me. And again, you had me do Pinterest and I pulled out the ones that I liked for author photography, although it's harder than it sounds because there's a lot of really dreadful, as we discovered, a lot of really cheesy and dreadful author photography. But then you had said, oh, actually, based on what you've said, I really think that the venue's not right. And then you found an incredible venue, which I still can't get over how on brand the venue was and how good the photos, the colours and everything just worked together so perfectly. But I think that's probably a good example of the process in action, right? Because it was like, I had an idea, I gave you a bit of a thought process of what I wanted, but then you're the expert in the visual look and feel of it. And you're like, I'm not sure about that, but let's do this. And then the result was phenomenal.
And again, you started at a place, said, written a book, I need author photos, let's get this done. And that's where you start, because you're not going to go into the nitty gritty because you're focused on the book and the launch and what you're an expert in. And coming to have that conversation with me, need some headshots, you do headshots, I like your work, we can do this. And that's when I would get into that nitty gritty to get that shopping list from you, where you did pull some images together. And then when I saw the design of your book and the colours, and then just jumping on a Zoom with you, seeing that you were surrounded by plants, I could very easily see that the venue that was picked for you wasn't right. And we did need to go down that greenery route with plants. You were already telling your story, but I can see that you are in your job. Whereas I'm stepping into your world and I'm learning about your world. So I could easily come back in and make those recommendations. And that does make a difference because it would fit much better on your social media and your website, because those images should be an extension of your brand and not an add-on.
Yeah. And it really does make a huge difference. Just from, I know I was having this conversation with somebody else as well. Like, I'm so glad that the brand colors are on the book, the cover. I gave them the actual references for my brand colors, and then that the shoot is done in the brand feel as well, because it makes such a difference to be able to slot that into the rest of your content without it feeling jarring. So if we have, just to wrap this up, because it's such a great topic and I really enjoyed our conversation. So if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go for it, I know that I've got to up my imagery game, and they're going to make the commitment to find a photographer that meets their vision, and they're going to maybe go through that process of thinking about what they want. But do you just have any final tips if you're getting ready for a shoot, or maybe someone's listening to this and they're getting ready for their first shoot, or maybe their 50th shoot, who knows? But do you have any tips on how best to prepare?
So I would really go down, as I mentioned, to talking about building a mood board. So we've covered that, pulling those images together. But I would also take it one step further, is to actually make a list of where you're going to use all those images. So is it for your profile picture, your icons, which is a circle? Is it for your website? And websites are really tricky because they have some really long banner images at the top. And then you might have some awkward shapes on your website that you might want to fill. You look at your email marketing, look at everywhere that you use your imagery on your website, on your shopping pages. They're generally sort of square, and make a list of all these different sizes, because as important as to create beautiful imagery and talk about styling and coloring, we need to know where you're using those images. So a lot of times I've had clients say to me, they booked a photo shoot and all the photos came back in one shape, one size, so to speak, so square, and they couldn't use it across the board. So it fulfilled only one element of their photography need. So really important to think about where you're going to be using those images. And the other thing to really think about when you're planning what I would actually call a shot list, where you're talking about images, is how you want to use them. Do you want to have images that actually have quite a bit of negative space? I always believe that one photo can be reused at least 5 times. Again, coming back to your investment, just because you take one photo doesn't mean you just use it once and it's forgotten about. With small businesses having access to brand toolkits like Canva, you can take that image and turn it into lots of content. Even if you took a very simple image on a white background, you could add graphics to talk about the ingredients in that product, or how that product will help whatever pain point, for example, it might be fulfilling. Yeah. Every image can be reused at least 3 to 4 times by using other tools like graphic design tools like Canva to recreate content. And you've also got to remember, when you're using your images, use them again. No one's going to remember what you posted last week. Just twist it up a little bit, add a spin to it, add your logo. That's all it could take. If you've got an offer coming up, a sale, Christmas, you can just add elements to reuse those images. So really important to think about how you're going to use them. If it's for a sales offer, have some negative space, or take the same shot and remove the props and just keep it a little bit simple. In terms of styling, the more you can create in terms of imagery from a shoot is really important. And talking to your photographer, a product photographer will give you ideas back. At the end of the day, us product photographers love what we do. We just want to get creative. And the more we can work with you and have fun with it, we will. We're creatives. We want to fulfill our soul. In fact, every shoot I do, I want it to be scroll stopping, because that's what I'm putting back in the world. So you're actually working with creatives who want to give you their ideas. To talk to them, even before you book a photographer, just have a chat to them just to see if they understand your vision. And they'll bounce back ideas. I think exactly what I did with you when we started talking. You were like, "Oh, I just need a few pictures. Just need to get this out." And I was like, "No, we can do this and that, and we can add some elements to support the launch." We get really involved. It's a massive passion, I think, when you work with creatives. Just as if you work with website designers or branding people, we just love it. So talk to photographers and bounce those ideas. But that is actually how I would prep, along with talking to a photographer, because they will give you a ton of ideas.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. So do you want to just let us all know how we can find out more about you and your product photography services?
Oh, thank you. So I am on social media, on Instagram under HJ Branding Stories. And I also have a website, which is hj-photography.co.uk. But again, if you just want to drop me a line, if you've got any questions, more than happy to answer your product photography questions. And one thing just to add is, we talked about investing in product photography, which is great when you have the budget and ready to do so. But in between that, even if you do have the budget or not, take your own photos and practice. Just take time to learn a little bit, because it's a key skill for any small business now. And you need to invest in product photography if you can. But in between that, learn to take photos yourself. We all have a good camera on our phone. I'm not going to knock that. But if you want to make life easier and not have to worry about it, go to an expert.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. All of Hiral's links are in the show notes, so do go check her out. And why not head over to Instagram, say hi at Resilient Retail Club. Let me know what you thought about today's episode, and let me know if you thought any differently about planning for your next product photo shoot. Of course, if you like or follow the podcast on Spotify or subscribe on iTunes, you'll be the first to know about each new episode when it comes out every week. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.